She wasn't breathing when I found her, but her fingers were still curled like she tried to crawl out of that alley. And the worst part wasn't the blood or the bruises. It was the lipstick smeared along another man's name on her phone screen, still lit up beside her body. Hit like, subscribe for more betrayal stories, and comment your city or country. My name is Logan, and on paper, I'm the kind of man people salute. I've spent most of my adult life in a sharp uniform, running operations for the U.S. military, giving orders that decide who makes it home and who doesn't. At work, nothing shakes me. But nothing in a war zone ever felt as real as the night I found my wife in that alley, making sounds that didn't even sound human. It was a Thursday night, the kind of night where the base is quieter, paperwork stacked, screens glowing. I was in my office, going through reports, when my cell started buzzing on the corner of my desk. No caller ID. I almost ignored it. Habit told me, if it's important, they'll call again. They did. I picked up on the second ring. Yeah, this is Logan. No answer. Just breathing. Not calm breathing. Wet. Broken, like each inhale had to fight for room. I stood up without thinking, chair rolling back and bumping the wall. Hello? Who is this? A soft scrape, like the phone was dragging across concrete. I heard something that might have been a whimper. Then the call cut off. No goodbye. No click. Just silence. I stared at the screen. Call duration, 11 seconds. Unknown number. I've had my share of threats over the years, angry people who didn't like what my unit had done overseas. But this didn't sound like a threat. This sounded like somebody already losing. My training kicked in. I pulled the call log, hit redial. Nothing. Straight to voicemail. My chest felt tight in a way that had nothing to do with combat or fitness. I checked the time, 9:43 p.m. That was late for Amelia. Amelia, my wife, usually texted if she was running behind. She'd gone out that evening for what she called a little air, saying she needed some time away from the base housing, away from the constant sense that we were always half on duty. She kissed my cheek, told me she'd be back by 9. It wasn't the first time, and I trusted her. At least I thought I did. I grabbed my jacket and keys, walking fast down the corridor. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Just signed out at the gate with a nod, like it was nothing. Like my heart wasn't slamming against my ribs. In the car, I pulled up an app that tracks recent calls and cell tower locations. Most officers don't bother with stuff like that. But I've spent enough time in intelligence to know how signals move, how they leave traces. The last ping from that unknown number placed it near the old industrial district, about 15 minutes from base. Wrong direction from where Amelia had said she was going. I drove faster than I should have, knuckles white on the steering wheel, headlights cutting through patches of fog and empty streets. The city gets different after 10. People disappear. Corners you never notice in the daytime suddenly look like they've seen things no one talks about. As I turned into the industrial area, buildings got more run down, graffiti layered over old graffiti. I killed the radio, rolled the window down a bit. You can smell trouble before you see it sometimes. Old oil, garbage, something metallic in the air. The app guided me closer, block by block. Finally, it put me within a few yards of the last ping. There was a narrow side street, almost more like a slit between two brick buildings. My headlights barely touched the end of it. No cars, no people, just a dark alley with a trash bin and a broken street lamp flickering on and off. I parked anyway, engine still running, and stepped out. The night suddenly felt louder. A distant siren, a dog barking somewhere, the hum of a highway far off. I walked toward the mouth of the alley, every step heavy, a part of me already knowing and refusing to know. Hello. My voice came out sharper than I meant. Anyone there? No answer. Just the drip of something. Maybe water, maybe not. The ground was uneven, trash scattered, glass crunching under my boots. Halfway in, the light from the street behind me faded, swallowed by the darkness. Then I saw it. A faint glow on the ground ahead. A phone screen. Face down, but not completely. The light spilled across what looked like a hand. For a second, I stopped breathing. Amelia? I rushed forward. The scene hit me in pieces. First, her hair, spread out on the dirty concrete like someone had dropped a dark curtain. Then her face, swollen on one side, a bruise already blooming across her cheekbone. Blood along her lip, a smear across her neck. Her blouse torn at the shoulder, skin scraped raw. Her legs twisted at an angle that didn't match the way someone would choose to lay down. Amelia. My voice cracked this time. I dropped to my knees beside her, fingers automatically going to her neck, searching for a pulse. It was there, but faint, irregular. Her breathing came in ragged pulls. Up close, I saw purple marks along her arms, like someone had grabbed and yanked her around. There were scuff marks on the wall, as if she'd tried to push herself up and kept sliding back down. The phone on the ground was hers. I recognized the case. The screen was still lit, open to a messaging app. A thread of texts, the last one unsent, just a half-finished word. Above it was a contact name saved as Lila, but the messages didn't read like two women talking. My chest burned. Amelia, hey, it's me. It's Logan. Stay with me, okay? You're okay. I'm here. My voice sounded calm, but my hands were shaking. Her eyelids fluttered, just once. Her lips moved, barely. I leaned closer, trying to catch any sound. Low. It was more exhale than word. Yeah, I'm here. Don't try to talk. We're getting you out of here. I hit 911 with one hand, gave them the location, my name, my rank, made it clear this was critical. As I talked, my eyes scanned the alley, the way they would in any hostile environment. There were drag marks on the ground, like she'd been pulled or had tried to crawl. A broken bottle near the wall, stained darker than the rest. And above her, on the brick, something sprayed in black paint. At first, I thought it was just more graffiti. Then I saw the symbol, 3 slanted lines crossing over a circle. I'd seen it in photos before, in briefing files about local street gangs trying to build a name. Kids who thought they were wolves. I also saw something else, maybe the cruelest detail. Right under that symbol, scratched into the brick with something sharp, were 4 letters. LGA. They had started to write my name. My name. Like this was a message, not just a beating. By the time the ambulance arrived, my pants were stained from kneeling in whatever covered that concrete. The paramedics moved fast, checking vitals, securing her neck, lifting her onto a stretcher. One of them asked, "Do you know what happened to her?" "No," I said, and it was the truth. "But I'm going to find out." They loaded her up. I climbed into the back without asking permission. A young paramedic, maybe mid-20s, looked at my uniform and then at my face. "Sir, she's in bad shape, but she's fighting." "She always fights," I said quietly. As the ambulance doors closed, I caught one last glimpse of the alley through the small rear window. The broken street lamp flickered again, light flashing over that painted gang symbol and the half-finished carving of my name. Whoever did this didn't just pick a random woman. They chose my wife. They chose that alley. They wanted me to see it. On the ride to the hospital, my phone buzzed again. I looked down. It was a notification from Amelia's phone, still in my hand. A new message popped up on the same chat thread with Lila. It read, "You told me you'd handle your husband. Did he follow you?" My heartbeat changed. Not faster, just heavier. Like each beat was a hammer. I stared at that sentence, at the name she'd hidden this person under, and felt something in my chest crack in a way bullets had never managed. This wasn't just violence. This was betrayal wrapped inside it, timed and placed like a trap. And sitting in the back of that speeding ambulance, listening to the monitor's beep, I realized something that made my skin go cold. Whoever sent that message probably still thought my wife could answer. They didn't know yet that I was the one holding her phone now. The ambulance siren still echoed in my head long after it went quiet. The hospital had that late-night emptiness to it, where every sound feels louder than it should. I stood in the hallway outside Amelia's room, her phone heavy in my pocket, like it weighed more than any weapon I'd ever carried. They moved her to ICU behind glass and curtains, machines now speaking for her. Tubes, wires, bandages. The woman who used to complain if her hair wasn't perfect now lay there with dry blood in it, and she couldn't even lift a hand to fix it. I stayed outside until a nurse finally said, "You can go in for a few minutes. Just don't touch the equipment." Her voice sounded gentle, like she expected me to fall apart. I didn't. I walked in like I was stepping into a briefing room. Up close, Amelia didn't look like a victim from a crime show. She looked like somebody who'd been punished by life itself. Her face was swollen on one side, lips split, one eye purple beneath the lid. Her hands had cuts along the knuckles and palms. She tried to fight. That part hurt almost as much as everything else. I pulled a chair close and sat down. Not too close. I wasn't sure where I stood with her anymore, even with all those machines keeping her alive. "Hey," I said quietly. "You're still here." Her chest rose and fell with the ventilator's rhythm. No response, just that steady mechanical sound. "I wish I could say this doesn't make sense," I went on. "But it does. Not the beating, not that alley, but the secrets." I reached into my pocket and took out her phone. The screen lit up, waiting for a face that wasn't there. I tapped in the passcode I'd watched her use 100 times when she thought I wasn't paying attention. The chat with Lila was still open. It didn't read like two female friends. It read like flirting that had turned into something more. I scrolled, my eyes catching pieces of conversations. "You don't know what it's like being married to a uniform. I feel like a widow with a husband who won't die. You actually listen to me." My hand tightened around the phone. "In combat, when you get hit, you know where the pain's coming from. You see the source." This felt like getting shot from behind. A soft knock at the door pulled my attention away. The detectives stepped in, Grant and Ivy, keeping their voices low, but their eyes sharp. "Didn't want to interrupt," Grant said, "but we'd like to clear up a few things while it's still quiet." I slid the phone face down on my thigh, screen dimming. "You're not interrupting anything," I said. "She's not exactly chatty." Ivy's gaze landed briefly on the phone, then on Amelia. "We won't take long," she said. "We're trying to figure out if this was a random gang attack or targeted." "It was targeted," I said too quickly. "They wrote my name on the wall." Grant nodded, like I'd confirmed something he already knew. "We had a unit check the alley. They saw the mark. 3 lines, circle, your name started. That's not a robbery gone wrong." "Nothing was taken," I added. "Her jewelry, her shoes, even her wedding ring. Still there." Ivy stepped closer to the bed, careful to keep her hands to herself. "Sometimes gangs go after people connected to law enforcement or military to prove a point," she said. "You've been in long enough that you've got a list of folks who don't like you." "I do," I said. "But they usually send messages to my command, not my wife's face." Grant crossed his arms. "We're also looking into the possibility that your wife knew at least one of the attackers," he said. "Walked into that alley on purpose, trusting the wrong person." I looked up at him. "You saying she asked for this?" "I'm saying people can be manipulated," he replied. "Trusted faces can walk you anywhere." He wasn't wrong. I just hated hearing it pointed at her. Ivy cleared her throat gently. "You mentioned earlier a friend named Lila," she said. "Someone your wife talked about. Do you know anything else about her? Last name? Where they met?" "She said they met at a cafe downtown." I answered. "Some coffee place she liked. She never brought her around. Just mentioned her when she started staying out later." "Did the staying out start around the same time?" Ivy asked. "Yeah," I said. "At first it was book club and girls' night. Then it became I just need air." Grant nodded slowly. "We're going to subpoena her phone records and socials," he said. "Track the number that called you. See who's behind it. If you have the phone, we'll need it soon." "I'll get it to you," I said. "You'll have everything. Just not right now." Ivy studied my face. "You're not just angry about what happened in that alley," she said quietly. "You're angry about something else you saw." I didn't answer. I didn't have to. She glanced at Amelia again. "Whatever your wife got herself into, she didn't deserve this," she said. "But understanding why she was there might be the key to putting the people who did this away." They backed off after that, giving me space. When they left the room, the air felt thicker, like all their questions were still hanging around. I looked back at Amelia. You wanted excitement, I said under my breath. You found it. Her eyelids flickered again, just a twitch. Maybe she heard me. Maybe it was just nerves firing. Either way, I kept talking. You said you were tired of being married to a ghost, I whispered. So you found someone who made you feel alive. Someone who didn't wear rank on their chest. Someone who probably bought you drinks, made you laugh, told you they understood. I glanced at the phone again. They also left you bleeding in an alley, I added. That's the difference between men like me and men like them. A nurse came in to adjust a drip. She can probably hear you, she said softly. People in her condition sometimes do. Just maybe stick to comforting things. I gave a humorless half smile. We're a little past comforting. The nurse raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. When she left, the room felt smaller, quieter. I finally picked the phone back up and opened the message that came in during the ambulance ride. You told me you'd handle your husband. Did he follow you? There it was. Proof that this wasn't just her sneaking off for secret texts and stolen touches. This person, whoever they were, knew about me. Knew enough to feel threatened by me. And trusted her to handle me. I scrolled up to the contact info. The number was local. No avatar, no last name. Just Lila. I took a photo of the screen with my own phone. Then another of the last unsent texts she wrote. I think he SUS. She ran out of time before she could finish the sentence. I didn't. Suspicious. I was suspicious. Someone she trusted enough to meet in a gang-run neighborhood had asked if I followed her. She tried to warn them I was catching on. I looked back at her face, swollen and still. You tried to walk both sides, I said quietly. My world and theirs. You thought you could stand in the middle and not get hit from either side. A low, unsteady breath came out of her. For half a second, her fingers twitched toward the blanket, like she was trying to grab something. I leaned closer. Who is he? I whispered. Who did you trade me for? No answer. Just the beep of the monitor and the hiss of the ventilator. It didn't matter. I wasn't going to wait for her to wake up and confess. I'd spent years tracking ghosts across maps with less than a name and a number. I had both now, plus a gang symbol and an alley full of clues. The detectives would do their work. They'd pull records, process the scene, file reports. I was going to do mine. And the first step was simple. Find Lila. Because whoever was hiding behind that name didn't just break my marriage. They signed their own sentence the second they left my wife in that alley and walked away. The thing about having training is, once your brain switches into mission mode, it doesn't switch back just because the target is personal. By the time the sun came up, I had one name, one number, one alley, and a wife in ICU who might wake up to a life she'd blown apart. I also had a decision to make. Wait for the detectives to move slowly through paperwork, or move first. I drove back to base just long enough to change into civilian clothes and file for emergency leave. Family medical crisis, I wrote. That was true. What I didn't write was that I planned to treat it like an operation. On my way out, I called someone who owed me more than a favor. Hunter, I said when he picked up. You still sitting on that access at the local PD? He grunted. You don't call for small stuff, Logan. What happened? My wife was jumped last night, I said. Gang territory. I need anything you've got on a crew using 3 lines through a circle. That little wannabe army, he said. Yeah, they've been noisy. New leader, calls himself Ryder. Real name still buried. You sure you want in on this? Don't want command thinking you're running your own war at home. Command doesn't need to know details, I said. Send me what you can. Photos, rap sheets, known hangouts. He sighed, then lowered his voice. Check you're secure in an hour. And Logan? Yeah. Don't do something that makes me have to testify about how sane you were. I'm not looking for blood, I said. I'm looking for clarity. That was only half a lie. Back in my car, I pulled into a quiet lot and opened Amelia's phone again. I went straight to the chat. Me, who is this? There was no response. I deleted the message before it went through. Emotion makes you sloppy. I couldn't afford that. Instead, I scrolled up, looking for anything that didn't sound like her. The first messages were playful, harmless on the surface. You seem lonely. Your husband doesn't know what he has. I can give you what he won't. Then the tone shifted months in. I hate the base. I feel like property. I want to feel something dangerous. That line stuck in my throat. Wanting danger is one thing. Meeting it in a dead-end alley is another. One message from Lila caught my eye. We'll meet closer to my side next time. I want to show you where I actually live, not just where I drink. My side. Street talk. Territory. I noted the date and time, cross-referenced it with a mental map of the city. That put them near the industrial district more than once. This wasn't her first time in that neighborhood. Just the first time it ended like this. My phone buzzed with an encrypted notification. Hunter had moved fast. I opened the file. Photos of a small crew flashed by. Guys leaning on cars, throwing signs, trying to look tougher than they were. But one picture made my stomach tighten. A group shot in front of a tagged wall. Same symbol. 3 lines through a circle. In the middle of them stood a man with a smug half-smile, a chain around his neck, and a pendant shaped like a circle with lines cut through it. Under the photo, alias, Ryder. Age unknown. Connected to assaults, extortion, small arms trade. No solid ID yet. Around his neck, I recognized the exact pendant I'd seen broken on the ground near Amelia in the alley. So the leader had been close enough to lose jewelry. I zoomed in. His face was the type women like when they're tired of rules. Cocky, relaxed, eyes that say nothing scares me. Not handsome in a clean way. Handsome in a dangerous, temporary way. I could understand how someone feeling invisible would be drawn to that. Understanding didn't make it forgivable. Another file listed known hangouts. A bar on the edge of their territory. A used car lot that never actually sold cars. A closed-up warehouse rumored to host underground fights and parties. I picked the bar first. Crime blends easier where music and alcohol blur details. The place was called Violets, but nothing about it was soft. Low light, sticky floor, a jukebox in the corner playing something with too much bass. Middle of the day, only a few people sat scattered at tables. The air smelled like spilled beer and old smoke. I took a seat at the bar, ordered a black coffee. Bartenders remember the one guy not drinking. I showed the photo of Ryder to the woman behind the counter. Seen him? I asked. She barely glanced before rolling her eyes. He thinks he owns that corner booth when he's here, she said. But he's not around this early. Why? He owe you money. Something like that, I said. You ever see him with a woman like this? I pulled up a picture of Amelia from last month. A selfie she'd taken in the car, light makeup, soft smile, the same one she'd posted saying something about self-care day. The bartender squinted. Yeah, she said slowly. Couple of times. Thought she was too clean for this place. He called her by some nickname. Officer's wife or something. Thought he was being funny. My jaw clenched. When did you last see them together? A week ago. Maybe a little more, she said. They left with a group. Headed toward the old factories. I mind my business. I just pour drinks. You ever hear him call her Lila? I asked. She shook her head. No. He called her by her real name once. Amelia. I remember, 'cause he said it like he owned it. For a second, everything in my body went still. He used her real name in here? Loud, she said. Didn't care who heard. So whoever this Lila contact was, it wasn't the name he used in public. That meant Lila was a cover he wanted her to use when she talked about him, or maybe a way to hide him in her phone. The bartender leaned on the counter, eyes narrowing. Look, you a cop? No, I said. Then do yourself a favor, she replied. Let the people who get paid to chase guys like him do their job. Ryder's climbed fast because he's reckless. Reckless people don't mind taking others down with them. I finished my coffee in one long swallow, left cash on the bar, and stood up. I've spent years watching other people do my job halfway, I said. I don't let anyone else clean up my messes. This doesn't look like your mess, she said. I looked her in the eye. It is now. Back in the car, the pieces started forming a picture. Ryder, the gang leader, took a high-ranking military man's lonely wife and turned her into a secret he could parade around his world. He walked her into his territory, into his bars, his alleys. Somewhere along the line, someone in his crew or orbit decided she was more than a fling. She was leverage. You told me you'd handle your husband. He knew exactly who I was. I pulled up the photos of his hangouts again and focused on the warehouse. It was close to the alley where I found Amelia. Too close to be coincidence. If he ran his little kingdom from there, he was comfortable nearby. Comfortable enough to think he owned everything around it, including the alley. I didn't head there yet. Walking straight into a nest gets you stung. Instead, I drove back to the hospital. When I reached Amelia's room, the lights were dimmed. A nurse checked her chart, then stepped out, letting me slip in. I sat down and leaned forward, elbows on my knees, looking at her face. I met him today, I said quietly. Not in person, but I know his face now. I know his pendant. I know his bars, his friends, his reputation. No reaction, just the steady beep. He called you officer's wife in front of people, I went on. He used your real name. He showed you off like a trophy he stole from a uniform. My voice dropped even lower. I'm not going to drag him into an alley, I said. I'm not going to put my hands on him. That's not how this ends. I glanced at the hallway, then back at her. I'm going to pull his world apart until he wakes up in the same filth you did, I said. And when he looks around and realizes he's alone, it won't be because I broke him with fists. It'll be because every piece of power he thought he had has turned its back on him. For a second, her fingers twitched again, the slightest movement against the sheet. Maybe she heard me. Maybe it was just nerves. Either way, the mission had started. And this time, the battlefield was my own city. Days in the hospital blur if you let them, but I didn't. I tracked everything. Vitals, visitors, shifts, every cop who came by, every nurse who flinched when they read the chart. Amelia stayed under, floating somewhere between here and gone, while the detectives built their case the usual way, slow, careful, by the book. I had no interest in by the book. On the third day, just after sunrise, my phone buzzed with a message from Hunter. Got you something. Check the attachment. Street cam pull from your alley. Quality's bad, but timing's gold. I opened the file. Grainy video, black and white, timestamped 2 hours before I found her. It showed the mouth of the alley from across the street. A car rolled up. Older model, loud muffler, paint too shiny for the neighborhood. 4 guys got out. One wore that same circle and lines pendant around his neck. Rider. A 5th figure walked up from the sidewalk a minute later. Hoodie, jeans, hair in a loose bun. Even from the terrible angle, I knew Amelia's walk. She moved like she was trying to look casual and failing. They talked near the street, then drifted into the alley together. The footage cut ahead. 23 minutes later, the car pulled away with 3 guys inside. Ryder wasn't one of them. He had business elsewhere. I stared at the empty frame where they'd disappeared. 23 minutes. Long enough to ruin a life. When I walked into Amelia's room that afternoon, something felt different. The machines hummed the same, but her face wasn't as slack. There was tension now, like her muscles were trying to remember how to work. A nurse looked up from the monitor. Her levels are improving, she said softly. She might start drifting in and out. If she wakes, don't overwhelm her. Familiar voices help. I pulled the chair closer. For the first time, I let myself reach out and take her hand. It was warmer than the last time I touched her. Human again, not just the body the staff was fighting to keep running. Amelia, I said quietly. If you can hear me, it's me. Logan. Her eyelids trembled, then lifted a fraction. One eye opened partway, unfocused at first, then clumsy as it tried to find me. I leaned closer. You're in the hospital. You're safe right now. Her lips moved, dry and cracked. I grabbed a damp sponge from the bedside tray and touched it gently to her mouth. She swallowed weakly. Low. It came out as a breath more than a word. Yeah, I said. I'm here. Her brow furrowed, like something hurt that wasn't physical. I didn't. Her voice broke into a cough. The monitor blipped faster. Easy, I said. Don't push it. She ignored that, tried again. Did you get my call? I thought of the breathing in my ear, the scrape of her phone on concrete. Yeah, I said. I got it. A tear slid from the corner of her eye. I was gonna warn you, she whispered. He said you'd never see it coming. Every word cost her. I could see it. But if I stopped her now, I might never get this window again. Who? I asked softly. Who said that? Her gaze drifted past me for a moment, like she was searching for a memory in the ceiling tiles. Ryder, she breathed. He wasn't supposed to let them, she winced, breath catching. Let who? I asked. The guys with him? The crew? Her fingers tightened weakly around mine. I thought it was just fun, she rasped. Someone who saw me. He said I was wasted on you. That you loved your rank more than your home. The words hit hard, but I kept my face steady. This wasn't about my pride. Not right now. Why that alley, Amelia? I asked. Why there? She swallowed, eyes glistening. He said it was quiet. Said his boys respected him. No one would bother us. Her breath hitched. Then they started laughing. Calling me. Officer's wife. Said I talked too much about you. And he let them touch you? My voice dropped lower, colder. She shook her head in a small, jerky motion. He walked away, she whispered. Got a call, said he had. Real business. Told them. Don't break the merchandise. My stomach turned. Merchandise, I repeated. Her eyelids fluttered. I tried to leave, she said. Told them I'd scream. One of them hit me. After that it's pieces. She took a shaky breath. I called you, she whispered. I crawled till I could hit your name. Thought, if you heard me, you'd know something was wrong. I heard you, I said. My hand tightened around hers. You did enough. Her eyes finally met mine, really focused now, and what I saw in them wasn't just pain. It was shame. I was lonely, she choked out. I wanted to hurt you. Just a little. Make you feel what I felt. I didn't think they'd. Her face crumpled. If she could have hidden under the blanket, she would have. I know, I said quietly. You thought you were stepping into a movie, not a war zone. I betrayed you, she sobbed, the sound thin and raw. I chose the wrong man, to make you jealous. That's one way to put it, I said. You picked a gang leader who uses people like currency. Her breath shuddered. He knows where you work, she whispered. He bragged about it. Said, having me was like having your weak spot. There it was. Confirmation of what I'd already pieced together. I wasn't just some nameless husband to Ryder. I was a target with a uniform attached. Outside the room, I noticed movement. Ivy stood in the doorway, watching quietly, notepad in hand but unused. She'd heard enough to know this was more than an affair gone wrong. Amelia's grip loosened, exhaustion pulling at her face. I'm sorry, she breathed. I didn't want you to see me like that. You're still here, I said. That's what matters now. Her eyes slipped closed again, lashes wet. Within seconds, she was out, breathing a little easier than before, but drained. I sat back, letting go of her hand slowly. It felt like I'd just watched someone sign a confession they barely understood. Ivy stepped in, voice low. We'll need an official statement when she's stronger, she said. But what she just said, it lines up with things we've been hearing about Ryder. Like what? I asked. Using women tied to military or cops to send messages, she replied. Making examples when they don't play his game. She wasn't supposed to be an example, I said. She was supposed to be leverage. Ivy studied my face. You don't look surprised. I've seen his type before, I said, just with different flags on their shoulders. She nodded slowly. Your wife admitting the affair complicates things. Defense lawyers love twisting that into she knew the risk. If anyone in a suit stands up and says she asked for this, you'll let us do our job. Ivy cut in, firm but calm. You stay clean, Logan. With your record, your involvement needs to look like cooperation, not revenge. I looked through the glass at Amelia again. What I do outside these walls is my business, I said quietly. But you'll get what you need. Statements. Phone. Whatever. Ivy held my gaze for a long second. Be careful where you point that anger, she said. Ryder's expecting rage. Guys like him aren't ready for quiet. She walked out, leaving me alone with the beeping monitors and the weight of Amelia's words. She had chosen another man to make me feel small. He had chosen her to make me look weak. They both misjudged me, because what I felt in that moment, more than pain or jealousy, was clarity. I knew his name. I knew his face. I knew how he operated. And now, finally, I knew exactly what he took from me. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I went home, showered, shaved, and sat at my kitchen table with a pen, a notebook, and Ryder's face open on my phone like it was just another file. This is how I stay dangerous. I don't look like it. I wrote 3 columns on the page. Where he moves, who he trusts, what he fears. Then I started filling them in. From Hunter's files, from Ivy's hints, from the bartender at Violet's, a pattern formed fast. Ryder liked attention but hated being laughed at. He strutted in his bars, played king in that warehouse, but he didn't handle disrespect. That kind of pride is a crack you can drive a truck through if you know how. I circled one word: paranoid. Guys like him need everyone scared of them. The one thing they can't stand is their own people doubting them. So I didn't go looking for Ryder first. I went looking for his shadows. There's a gas station a few blocks from Violet's, the kind of place where people hang around without buying much. I parked there near dusk, hood up, pretending to mess with the engine. After 20 minutes, I saw what I was waiting for: 2 guys in matching jackets, circle and lines scribbled on the back, arguing by the dumpster. I listened. People talk louder when they want to feel tough. Told you, man, he's slipping, one said. Ryder's making moves with people way above our heads. Shut up, the other hissed. You want to end up like that woman in the alley? You don't ask questions. You follow orders. So the story was already on the street. I let them leave, then followed at a distance, staying 2 cars back. They drifted toward the warehouse district, laughing, pushing each other. No idea they were being tracked by a man who plans routes for a living. By the time they ducked into a side door of the warehouse, I'd counted cameras, exits, windows, and blind spots. This place wasn't a fortress. It was a stage. I didn't need to rush. I just needed to know how the audience came and went. That night, back at the hospital, I walked into Amelia's room to find her a little more awake. Less tubes, more awareness. Her eyes followed me when I came in. You look like you haven't slept, she said, voice still thin but clearer. Sleeping's not a priority right now, I said, taking the chair. She watched me for a long second. Are you going to leave me? She asked. The question landed harder than I expected. Right now, I'm not thinking about papers, I said. Right now, I'm thinking about the man who walked you into that alley and left you there. A flicker of guilt crossed her face. I thought he cared, she whispered. That's the worst part. I walked in on purpose. I know, I said. But you didn't choose what happened after he walked away. Silence settled between us, heavy but honest. You're different, she said quietly. Colder. I don't have room for warm, I replied. Warm gets people killed. Her eyes filled again. I'm sorry, Logan. I heard you the first time, I said. Make that apology matter by remembering everything you can about his people. Names, tattoos, cars, places you met. She swallowed and started talking, halting but focused. A guy named Felix who always laughed too loud. A nervous driver called Colin. A woman with red hair who counted cash. Pieces of a puzzle I'd already started laying out. I wrote it all down. When she got tired, I stood. Rest, I said. You did what you can for today. As I turned to leave, she whispered, Are you going to hurt him? I paused in the doorway. Not the way you're asking, I said. He wants bruises and blood. That's easy. I'm going after something harder. What's that? She asked. Control, I said. His image. His power. The way his own people see him. Once that's gone, he'll wish all I wanted was a fight. Out in the hallway, I caught a glimpse of myself in the glass. Plain clothes, tired eyes, nothing dramatic. I looked like any other worn-out husband with a sick wife. That was perfect, because while everyone else saw a man holding his life together by a thread, I knew the truth. I was pulling the thread on purpose. And Ryder's world was what would come undone. Breaking a gang is one thing. Realizing someone you know opened the door for them is worse. Ryder's crew moved like small-time thugs, but the way they'd used Amelia told me something else was at play. They knew too much about me, about where I worked, about my schedule. That didn't come from flirting at a bar. That came from someone close. I went back through Amelia's messages, not just with Lila, but with everyone. Friends, family, group chats, the small, everyday stuff you stop really seeing when life feels normal. Patterns started to pop. My sister-in-law, Morgan, had been pushing Amelia to live a little, always complaining that the military turned people into robots. A cousin, Preston, joked too often about my rank, the benefits, the security. Must be nice having that kind of shield around you, he'd texted once. Nobody messes with a man like that. And then there was Mason, Amelia's younger brother. The one who'd never quite gotten his life together, always between jobs, always asking me to put in a word for him somewhere. I tried once. He'd blown it, showed up late, then blamed the system. I remembered a barbecue months earlier. Mason had pulled me aside, beer in hand. "Man, you don't appreciate what you've got," he'd said, nodding toward Amelia. "You're always on base, always serious. She deserves someone who actually shows up." At the time, I'd brushed it off as drunk talk. Now it replayed differently. I pulled my own phone and opened a secure line to Hunter. "I need you to run some names," I said. "Family side. Off the record." He grunted. "You're stepping on landmines now." "They stepped into mine first," I replied. "I'll send the list." I sent 3, Morgan, Preston, Mason. Full names, dates of birth, last known jobs. Then I headed to the hospital again. Not to see Amelia this time. To see who else showed up. Visiting hours always reveal where loyalty actually sits. When I walked into the waiting area that afternoon, Mason was already there, pacing, hands clasped like he was trying to look torn up. He wore a hoodie and jeans, cap pulled low. When he saw me, his face shifted into something between guilt and relief. "Logan," he said, pulling me into a hug that felt too eager. "How is she? Any updates?" "She's holding on," I said, stepping back. "Doctor says she's stronger today." He nodded too fast. Good. Good. She doesn't deserve this. Whoever did it. Man, they. He stopped, maybe realizing he was about to say more than he should. "They what?" I asked. "They picked the wrong woman," he said, eyes darting. "That's all I meant." He sat down, tapping his knee. "You know, some people on the street are saying this was about you," he added carefully. "Like, because of what you do? Your job." "Street's well informed," I said. "Funny thing is, those same streets don't usually know details like rank, deployment history, family." He swallowed. "People talk. You know how it is." I watched him for a moment. "Who do you talk to, Mason?" I asked. "When you're not here pretending you care more than you do." His head snapped up. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you always show up when something dramatic happens," I said evenly. "But when things are calm, you're nowhere. Unless you need something." His jaw clenched. "You think I had something to do with this?" "I think whoever did this knew exactly who I am," I said. "And that kind of information doesn't come from a bartender." His eyes flashed anger. "You walk around like you're untouchable," he muttered. "Like that uniform makes you a different species. You ever think about how that makes the rest of us feel?" There it was. The part he usually hid. "So you even the playing field?" I asked, voice low. "By making sure the wrong people knew exactly how to hit me?" He looked away. "I didn't tell them to hurt her," he said, too quickly. "It was just supposed to scare you. Make you see you're not some superhero." My chest went cold. "Who did you talk to?" He rubbed his hands over his face. "Guys at a bar," he said. "They were bragging about knowing heavy people." I was drunk. I said my brother-in-law thought he was untouchable 'cause he's high up in the military. "Did you say my name?" I asked. "Maybe," he muttered. "I don't remember everything." "Did you say hers?" His silence was the answer. I leaned in, keeping my voice calm, because that scared him more than yelling would. "You handed them a map?" I said. "You put a target on her back. You might as well have walked her into that alley yourself." He shook his head hard. No, no, that's not what They said they'd maybe rough you up, send a message. I never thought they'd touch her. She's my sister. You don't get to decide how people like that use your information, I said. You just opened the door and walked away. His leg bounced, panic surfacing. You're not going to tell her, right? He asked. She'll never forgive me. Whether I tell her or not, I said. You still did it. You still have to live with that. He grabbed my arm as I stood. Logan, please, I pulled free. You want to fix something? I said. Give me every detail about those guys. Names, bars, how many times you talked to them. Everything. You start there. He hesitated, then nodded, fear finally melting some of the arrogance. He started talking about late nights at Violet's, about a guy named Felix who always had cash, about someone they called Q, who bragged about handling problems for Ryder. Each name he gave lined up with pieces Amelia had mentioned. The puzzle was getting clearer. As he talked, my phone buzzed with a message from Hunter. You were right. One of your names popped in a gang chatter scrape. Mason had multiple contacts flagged with Ryder's circle around the time your wife started going missing at night. Confirmation. When Mason finished spilling what he knew, he slumped back in the chair. I swear I didn't mean for this, he whispered. Intent doesn't undo impact, I said. You wanted to knock me down a peg. You used the most dangerous people you could find to do it. He stared at the floor, silent. I left him there and walked to the ICU doors. Inside Amelia's room, she slept again, breathing easier than before. Machine still watched her, but she looked less like a victim now and more like someone recovering from a storm. I stood at the glass and realized the first twist of this whole mess wasn't just that my wife had cheated. It was that the person who set the whole chain in motion wasn't a stranger in a gang. It was family. Mason's confession didn't give me relief. It gave me direction. I didn't tell Ivy everything he'd said, not yet. I gave her enough. Mention of loose talk at Violet's, bragging about knowing heavy people, hints that my name had been thrown around in the wrong company. She took notes, eyes narrowing when I mentioned Felix and Q. We've heard those names before, she said. Small fish with big mouths. The kind Ryder keeps around to do stupid things. Stupid things like turning my marriage into a street story, I replied. She slipped her pen into her notebook. We're getting close to a warrant for the warehouse, she said. But we need one more solid piece to make sure it sticks. Then I'll bring you something, I said. She gave me a look that said she knew exactly what I meant and didn't like it. Stay within the lines, Logan, she warned. If you go rogue and this blows back, it helps Ryder, not you. I'm not going rogue, I said. I'm just not waiting around. At home that night, the house felt smaller than ever. Amelia's mug still sat in the sink. Her blanket was still on the couch. It was like she'd just stepped out, except she hadn't, and the person who helped push her out the door was her own brother. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. You're asking too many questions, it read. Back off if you want what's left of your life. No name. No thread of details. Just smug confidence. I stared at it for a long beat, then saved the number. Another piece. The next day, more families started showing up at the hospital. Concern traveled fast when there was something to watch. Morgan swept in with flowers, her eyes already shiny with rehearsed tears. She hugged me like she'd been waiting for this moment to show how much she cared. This is awful, she said, sitting beside me. I told Amelia she needed more excitement, but not like this. Poor thing. You told her that? I asked. She nodded, adjusting her bag. She was always complaining you were married to your work. I said, Girl, you get one life. Don't waste it just waiting at home for some man in uniform to remember you exist. I let that sink in. And did you introduce her to anyone who could help with that excitement? I asked. Morgan blinked. What do you mean? You mentioned bars, parties, I said. Ever bring her along? Ever introduce her to anyone connected to that side of town? She hesitated. Too long. Once or twice, she admitted. Just to get her out. I didn't know they were like that. They who? I asked. Be specific. She shifted in her chair. Some guys at Violet's, she said. They always had money, always buying rounds. One of them said he knew people who could get us into real clubs, not just dumpy bars. Ryder? I asked. She nodded, eyes dropping. He was charming, she said. Cocky. Amelia ate it up. I thought it was harmless flirting. Then she started going without me. So Mason opened his mouth, and Morgan opened the door. I didn't say what I was thinking. I just stood. You can see her if you want, I said. She's in and out, but she'll know you're there. Morgan looked up, guilt flickering. You're mad at me, she said. I'm focused, I replied. Be honest with her when she wakes up. That's on you. I left her in the waiting area and walked toward ICU, passing Preston in the hallway. He avoided my eyes, muttered something about praying for her, then kept moving. Every relative had a tell. Fear, guilt, denial. You learn to read it fast. Inside Amelia's room, the air felt calmer. She was awake again, eyes clearer, though tired. How many people have you interrogated today? She asked softly. Not enough, I said, pulling up a chair. Morgan came. So did Mason. Their stories line up more than they think. She winced. They they meant exactly what they did. I cut in gently. None of them pictured you on the ground. That doesn't make them innocent. Just short-sighted. Her eyes filled again. Feels like my whole world was made of cracks, she whispered. I just didn't see them until everything broke. I sat back, studying her. You saw them, I said. You just pretended they were lines on a map, not fault lines. She swallowed. What are you going to do with all this? She asked. With them? Nothing dramatic, I said. They'll destroy themselves just fine when the truth gets out. You heal. They live with what they set in motion. She blinked. That's it. That's the part that hurts more than a punch, I said. Watching people realize they can't outrun what they did. Her breathing slowed, shoulders relaxing a little. And Ryder? She asked. My jaw tightened. Ryder gets a different kind of lesson. Before she could ask what that meant, a nurse came in to check vitals. I stepped aside, letting them work. In the hallway, my phone buzzed again. Another message from the same unknown number. You don't stop. You won't just lose her. You'll lose your career, your reputation. Everything you think makes you untouchable. This time I smiled. They still thought my rank was my armor. They didn't understand. It was the one thing I was willing to put on the line. The threat messages told me two things. They were scared enough to warn me, and cocky enough to think fear would work. That combination always cracks. I saved the number, then forwarded it to Hunter with a single line. Run this through whatever you've got. A few hours later, he replied, Burner. Bounced through a cheap app. But last tower hit puts it near the warehouse. They're close. Good. I wanted them close. The war and Ivy was working on would take time. Judges like clean paperwork. Gang leaders like chaos. I needed both to collide in the same place. That night, I drove back to the industrial district, parking 2 blocks away from the warehouse. I walked the rest of the way, hood up, hands in my pockets. Just another shadow in a street full of them. Music leaked from inside. Bass-heavy, muffled shouts. The kind of sound that says everyone's pretending tonight will never end. I didn't go to the front. I slipped around the side, taking the same route those 2 lieutenants had used before. There was a small stack of crates against the wall near a dirty, high window. I climbed just enough to see through the corner. Inside, the warehouse looked like a cheap movie set. Folding tables, plastic chairs, a makeshift bar. Guys throwing dice, others passing around cash. A few women laughing too loud, eyes already glassy. And there, in the middle of it, like he'd been born for center stage, was Ryder. The pendant hung over his shirt, catching the light when he moved. He was telling a story, arms wide, his crew hanging on every word. They wanted to be him. They didn't realize how small his world really was. I watched him for a minute, memorizing everything. Who leaned in, who rolled their eyes, who stayed on the edges pretending not to care. Every hierarchy has fractures. Then I climbed down and walked to the alley. The same alley where I'd found Amelia. Tonight, it was quiet again. Same broken light. Same smell. The blood was gone, washed away by rain and time. but I could still see her lying there when I closed my eyes. I stood where her phone had been, took out my own, and snapped photos of the walls, the ground, the symbol sprayed above. I recorded a short video, panning from the alley mouth to the spot where her body had been, capturing angles, distances, shadows. Evidence for Ivy. Fuel for me. When I turned to leave, a voice floated from the mouth of the alley. "You lost, man. This ain't a great place for a stroll." Two guys stepped in, blocking the exit. I recognized one, Felix, from the bartender's description and Mason's stories. Tall, restless, eyes always moving. The other was shorter, heavier, a scar along his jaw. I kept my hands visible, posture relaxed. "Just taking a walk," I said. "Didn't realize this spot was reserved." Felix smirked. "Yeah, well, consider yourself informed. Wrong kind of people hang around here." "Like who?" I asked. "Like the kind who don't like questions," he said, "and don't like military types sniffing around." The word landed between us like a dropped knife. I let a beat pass. "Who said I'm military?" I asked. He tapped his nose. "Got a smell," he said. "You stand too straight. Look too hard at exits. Plus, your face has been passed around. You're that husband, right?" "Officer Boy." I didn't let my jaw tighten, even though every muscle wanted to. "Maybe," I said. "You got a problem with that?" Scarred Jaw laughed. "You got some nerve coming back here," he said. "Your girl already got the message. You should have taken the hint." I took a small step closer, not enough to crowd them, just enough to make them decide whether to back up or stand their ground. "Funny thing about messages," I said. "Sometimes they get returned to sender." Felix's smile thinned. "You think you're the first tough guy to come looking for revenge?" he asked. "You'll disappear same as the others." "I'm not here to disappear," I said calmly. "I'm here to watch." "Watch what?" he asked. "Watch what happens when the people you follow realize your boss isn't half as smart as he thinks he is," I answered. "Watch who jumps ship first when the heat hits." For the first time, doubt flickered in his eyes. Guys like Felix don't like being reminded they're replaceable. Scarred Jaw scoffed. "You talk too much." "And you text too much," I said, pulling my phone out. I held up the screen just long enough for them to see the threat message, then locked it again. Tell whoever sent that they should have picked a better app. Their bodies tensed in sync. "You're playing a dangerous game, Officer Boy," Felix said quietly. "So is your boss," I replied. "Difference is, I've survived worse players." We stared at each other, a three-way standoff in a dead alley. Then, in the distance, faint but growing, sirens started to wail. Not a coincidence. Ivy had moved faster than anyone expected. Felix heard it too. His head snapped toward the street. "We're done here," he muttered. "Get out of this alley and don't come back." He and his friend backed off, disappearing around the corner. They didn't run, but they didn't strut either. The sound of sirens replaced the music from the warehouse as police units swarmed the block. I stepped out of the alley just in time to see two unmarked cars cut off the warehouse entrance. Doors flew open, officers spilling out, shouting commands. Another patrol car screeched to a stop at the back door. Ryder came out into the light, hands raised halfway, eyes darting as he tried to assess how bad this really was. His pendant caught the flashing red and blue, looking cheaper under real pressure. From across the street, I leaned against a lamppost and watched. This wasn't my raid. My hands stayed in my pockets. But I memorized every expression on his face. The flash of indignation, the attempt at charm, the moment it shifted into calculation when he realized this wasn't just a quick pat down. Ivy stepped into view, badge out, voice carrying over the noise. She looked calm, prepared. She'd gotten her warrant, and she was using it well. Officers went inside, pulling out boxes, bags, phones, weapons. One carried out a small bag with a familiar broken pendant inside. Evidence. Ryder locked eyes with me for a fraction of a second across the chaos. His brow furrowed, like he was trying to place me. Then it clicked. The alley, the wife, the man who didn't stay away. He smiled, even as they cuffed him. "Cocky, you look small from here," I called softly, more to myself than him. He mouthed something I couldn't hear, but I didn't need to. I already knew his type of words. As they put him in the back of the car, the alley behind me stayed empty. For now, because getting him arrested was just the beginning. Ryder wasn't scared of cells. He was scared of being forgotten by his own people. And that part was still to come. The day of the arraignment, the courthouse hallway felt like a different kind of battlefield. No uniforms, no rifles, just suits, badges, and people trying to look more confident than they felt. I wore my dress uniform anyway. Not for show. For clarity. Amelia was strong enough to sit in a wheelchair now. Bruises fading, but not gone. She insisted on being there. I need to see him standing in front of someone he can't charm, she'd said. So we sat in the second row together, her hand resting on the armrest, mine on my knee. We didn't touch, but we were side by side. Ryder walked in wearing county orange, hands cuffed, chin high. Even in that, he tried to turn it into a look. Some of his guys were brought in too. Felix, Scarjaw, and two others Amelia had mentioned. They scanned the room like they were checking for cameras, fans, witnesses. When Ryder's eyes found us, his smile widened. He tilted his head slightly, like this was some kind of reunion. The judge entered, and the room stood. When everyone sat again, the charges were read. Assault, kidnapping, gang activity, attempted murder, witness intimidation. The list went on. Counsel, how does your client plead? The judge asked. Ryder's lawyer, slick and polished, stood. Not guilty, Your Honor. Amelia let out a small breath that sounded almost like a laugh, but there was nothing funny in it. The prosecutor started outlining the state's case. Surveillance from the alley. Phone records tying Ryder's number to Amelia's. Threat messages traced back to their circle. Statements from low-level members who flipped fast when faced with serious time. And then, the part that mattered most to me, the way they framed Amelia. She was lured under false pretenses, the prosecutor said, led to believe she was meeting someone who cared about her. Instead, she was used as a tool to send a message to her husband, an officer in the United States military. That phrasing mattered. It drew a line between her bad choices and their criminal ones. Ryder's lawyer tried to push back. She went willingly, he argued. She knew these men. She was seen laughing with them at bars. This was, at worst, a consensual situation that escalated unpredictably. My hand curled into a fist on my leg. Amelia stared straight ahead, jaw tight. When it was her turn to speak later in the process, she rolled herself to the stand, moving carefully. The courtroom quieted. People always lean in when a victim talks. They want a story. What happened that night? The prosecutor asked gently. Amelia swallowed, glanced once at me, then fixed her eyes on the judge. I betrayed my husband first, she said, voice shaking but clear. I started talking to someone behind his back. Someone exciting, reckless, who made me feel seen. That was my sin. Nobody forced me to text. Nobody forced me to meet him the first time. A murmur went through the room. The prosecutor looked startled for half a second, then let her continue. But that night, she went on, I walked into that alley because I believed I was meeting a man who cared about me. He told me his guys respected him, said nothing would happen unless he allowed it. He told me he knew my husband's position. He said having me made him feel powerful. Her voice cracked. She took a breath. When things changed, she said, when his crew started touching me, ripping my clothes, hitting me, I said no. I tried to leave. He walked away. He left me there with people who saw me as property. I didn't consent to that. I didn't consent to being used as a weapon. The defense lawyer tried to shake her. You admit you lied to your husband. You admit you met this man more than once. Why should we believe you didn't know who you were dealing with? He pressed. She looked at Ryder, really looked at him. Because if I had known he'd walk away while his men beat me half to death, she said, steady now, I wouldn't be here. I'd be dead. I was foolish. I was selfish. But I wasn't suicidal. The judge watched her closely, eyes thoughtful. That mattered. When she was done, she wheeled herself back to our row. She didn't look at me, but her hand trembled. The truth had cost her something. That was part of the justice, whether anyone else saw it or not. Later, Mason took the stand under a cooperation deal. He looked smaller than ever, suit hanging loose, eyes rimmed red. He admitted the bar talk, the bragging, the way he'd mentioned my rank, my schedule, my base. How he'd thought it was just tough guy talk, until the news showed his sister in a hospital bed. Morgan testified about introducing Amelia to Ryder's circle, thinking it was harmless, wanting to pull her out of boring wife energy. Her voice broke when the prosecutor asked if she regretted it. Every word chipped away at Ryder's image, not just as a criminal, but as a man his own circle could feel safe around. It painted him as reckless, selfish, willing to use anyone. When Felix took the stand as part of his own deal, the real crack formed. He said she was just leverage, Felix admitted. Said if the officer got too close, we'd make an example out of her. The alley was his idea. He said, nobody forgets where they first bleed for real. From the defense table, Ryder's face hardened. The loyalty he'd counted on was slipping. In the end, the judge denied bail. The trial date was set, and Ryder was led away, still trying to smirk, but the edges were gone. Outside the courthouse, reporters hovered, calling my name, asking for comments. Do you feel responsible as a husband and an officer? One shouted. Do you blame your wife? I looked straight into the nearest camera. They made choices that turned my home into a battlefield, I said. My wife, my in-laws, those men inside. They all played a part. The difference is, only some of them turned it into a crime scene. Is this about revenge? Another called. No, I said. Revenge would have been meeting them in that alley. This is about making sure the next woman they try to use doesn't end up like my wife. That night, back at the hospital, Amelia watched a news clip of my statement on her phone. Her eyes stayed on my face. You didn't call me a victim, she said. You're more than that, I replied. You're also someone who helped light the match. She nodded slowly. Do you hate me? She asked. The question hung there between us. I don't know what I feel yet, I said honestly. But I know this. I won't let what they did to you become just another story people forget. She looked down at her hands. Is that for me? She asked. Or for you? Both, I said. Because the quiet revenge wasn't just about punishing them. It was about refusing to let them write the ending. Time didn't fix anything by itself. What changed things was what we chose to do with it. The trial moved faster than anyone expected. Too many people flipped. Too much evidence tied together. Messages, street footage, threats, testimony from his own crew. Ryder went from acting like a king to sitting like just another man in a jumpsuit while a judge read out years he'd never get back. He didn't look at me when the sentence dropped. He looked at Amelia. Maybe he expected fear. Maybe regret. She just stared back, empty of both. Whatever part of her had once wanted him to see her had died in that alley. Ryder went away for a long time. Felix and the others took deals, traded freedom for reduced years and permanent targets on their backs in every neighborhood that still believed in loyalty. Mason got probation and a record that would follow him longer than any job he ever quit. Morgan lost more than friends. She lost the ability to pretend she was just fun. The headlines moved on. The cameras disappeared. But our life didn't snap back. We didn't do the usual thing. No, 6 months later we were fine. No, a year later everything was healed. It was messier than that. Some days, we lived like polite strangers who shared a house and a history. We talked bills, appointments, rehab schedules. On good days, we talked about small, ordinary things. The neighbor's dog, a movie one of us half-watched, a recipe she tried that didn't turn out right. On bad days, we didn't talk at all. The military offered me a promotion. Higher office, more distance from the field. On paper, it was a reward. In reality, it was a chance to hide behind a bigger desk and pretend my life outside those walls wasn't cracked. I turned it down. Instead, I requested a transfer to a role that worked with families, helping soldiers and their spouses deal with the strain of deployments, long hours, the slow erosion of connection. Command was surprised. They thought I wanted more power. I'd learned the truth the hard way. Power doesn't protect your home if you never go inside it. One evening, months after the sentencing, I drove back to the alley alone. The city had painted over the symbol on the wall. The bricks were cleaner, patched. A new light had been installed that actually worked. No gang signs, no fresh trash. Just a quiet, ugly scar in the middle of everything. I stood where her body had been and where Ryder once thought he owned the night. It didn't feel like his place anymore. It didn't even feel like mine. It felt like a warning carved into the city itself. Places remember, I said out loud, more to myself than anyone. But they don't have to repeat. Footsteps sounded behind me. For a second my body tensed, old instincts kicking in. Then I heard her voice. "You still come here," Amelia said softly. I turned. She stood at the mouth of the alley, no wheelchair now, just a slight limp that hadn't completely left her. She'd followed me without saying anything, the way I once followed her only through a phone signal. "You shouldn't be walking this far," I said. She shrugged. "My physical therapist might disagree," she replied. "But I needed to see it. The way you do." We stood in silence for a moment, both looking at the spot that had changed everything. "They fixed the light," she murmured. "Some things get repaired," I said. "Some get replaced." She nodded, understanding more than the words said. "Do you ever wish we'd never met?" she asked suddenly. The question caught me off guard more than any bullet ever had. "No," I said after a long moment. "I wish we'd paid attention to what was breaking before someone else did. That's different." Tears filled her eyes, but they didn't fall. "You could still leave," she said. "You'd be right if you did. Everyone tells me I'm lucky you stayed this long." "I didn't stay out of pity," I said. "I stayed because walking away doesn't fix the part of me that didn't see you slipping. It just relocates the problem." She looked at me, really looked, like she was seeing someone new. "Do you think we can ever be us again?" she asked. I took a breath. "I don't think we'll ever be who we were before," I said. "Too much happened. Too much rock got exposed. But maybe we can be something else. Something more honest. If we decide not to lie, to ourselves or each other." She nodded slowly. "I can live with honest," she whispered. "Even if it hurts." We walked out of the alley together. Not holding hands. Not acting like some miracle had happened. Just side by side. Both knowing this place would always be a crack in our story, not the whole thing. Later that night, she sat across from me at the kitchen table. "I joined a support group," she said, "for partners who cheated and survived the fallout. Not just poor me victims. People who admit what they did and try to rebuild anyway." I raised an eyebrow. "How is it?" "Ugly," she said honestly. "But not as ugly as pretending I didn't choose the first step that led to that alley." I nodded. "I started talking to younger officers," I said, "about what this job really does to a house. Not just the hero stuff. The loneliness. The emotional distance. The way duty becomes an excuse." We sat there, two people who had broken each other and still somehow shared a table. "Do you forgive me?" she asked quietly. "I forgive you enough to not let what you did define the rest of your life," I said. "The rest, I'm still working on. That's the truth." She swallowed, accepting that. "Do you forgive yourself?" I asked back. "I'm learning," she said. "Some days more than others." There was no grand kiss. No montage. No easy. And then everything was fine. But there was something else. Choice. Every day after that, we had to choose whether we walked closer or further apart. Some days we failed. Some days we surprised ourselves. Ryder sat in a cell, his name slowly fading on the streets he once thought he owned. His crew scattered, loyalty traded for lighter sentences and safer corners. The alley he used as a stage now belonged to nobody. In the end, my revenge was simple. I outlived his story. I refused to let his choices be the final thing that defined ours. And quietly, without headlines or blood, that was enough. Because sometimes the sharpest revenge isn't what you do to them. It's what you refuse to let them do to you. If you reach this point, let me ask you something from the heart. When trust is broken this badly, do you believe a relationship should be rebuilt or buried? Think about it and tell your honest answer in the comments. Also, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from your city, or your country? And what kind of betrayal stories do you want to hear more? Cheating wife, family backstabbing, quiet revenge, courtroom justice, or something even darker and more emotional? Share your favorite type, and new stories will be created just for you. If this story gripped you, if you felt even one moment in your chest, tap like gently, hit subscribe in your own time, and stay close. There's another epic, emotional revenge story already on the way. Until then, take care of your heart, take care of your home, and we'll meet again in the next thriller. Story is finished.